This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Cutastrophe. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, November 25th, is a wide receiver who's mostly known for his time with the Minnesota Vikings in the 1990s. But people forget that he used to play for the Eagles and the Dolphins, too. He played at the Ohio State University and was drafted in 1987. He looked pretty good, but unfortunately, due to off the field issues, he left the Eagles and went to Minnesota and turned everything around. Since retiring, he's been part of HBO's Inside the NFL, Sunday NFL Countdown, Monday Night Countdown, and also is an assistant coach at St. Thomas Aquinas High School. He used to be part of an FS1 sports show, but because of issues, he had to leave in 2019. He is the brother of Butch Carter, former Raptors coach. He is Vince Carter. Wrong, no. He's Cris Carter. So Cris Carter was born in Troy, Ohio. His actual birth name was Gradiel Carter, but he dropped it for Troy, for Cris, during 7th grade. Cris Carter was heavily recruited out of high school, and because he was in the state of Ohio, it was natural that he would join Ohio State University, and he did, becoming the Ohio State's first All-American wide receiver, which was shocking. I thought Ohio State had a few other guys like Bushnagle do it, but I guess not. Carter wanted to be a football and basketball star at Ohio State, but because of his impact his freshman year at Ohio State in football, he stuck with football. And he actually, as a freshman, caught 9 balls for 172 yards. So he looked pretty good and all that. He looked pretty good. But Cris Carter didn't play his senior season because he signed with a sports agent, which makes him ineligible by NCAA rules. And Ohio State really needed Cris Carter, but no, he failed. He still led the school, still had the school record for receptions, and 168 of them. Missing one. However, the Eagles made him a 4th-round pick in the supplemental draft, so Cris Carter couldn't be in the major draft, I guess, because of his sports agent fiasco. So anyway, he still did okay with Philly. He got 11 touchdown catches in 1989, which was 3rd in the NFC. But it looked pretty good for him in Buddy Ryan's offense. Unfortunately, though, Carter had alcohol and drug abuse and said that he credited Buddy Ryan by cutting him because then he needed to turn his on and off season stuff in toll. For only $100 on waivers, Minnesota claimed him. So Carter didn't really see a lot of passes the first season. He was behind Hassan Jones and Anthony Carter on the depth chart. But despite that, he did have a 78-yard touchdown catch on Monday Night Football in Philadelphia, of all things. And then Hassan Jones had nothing going for him. And Anthony Carter was still there for Minnesota. So it was the two Carters helping Minnesota offensively. And Cris Carter, 91, caught 72 balls for 5 touchdowns. Looked pretty good. When Dennis Green got named Minnesota head coach, he decided to release Herschel Walker and Wade Wilson, which was a little bit shocking, but it worked out. They won the NFC Central. And Carter was still the primary aerial weapon, with Rich Gannon and Sean Salisbury throwing passes to him. He did have to miss 4 weeks because of the collarbone injury. Then Jim McMahon became the quarterback for the 93 season for Minnesota, and Carter broke out with over 1,000 yards receiving with 9 touchdown catches and getting to the Pro Bowl. And then the Vikings went with another quarterback, Warren Moon, who was acquired before the 94 season from Houston. And it was a rapport. Cris Carter knew that Moon would give him the ball. He made 122 catches, which was the NFL single-season record. That only held for 1 year until Herman Moore broke it. Moon and Carter helped out a lot. but they couldn't stop the Vikings from a third straight first-round playoff exit. But in '95, Carter caught 122 passes, with 17 touchdown catches, which was the most in the NFL. Unfortunately, the Vikings were 8-8. Cris Carter was basically the focal point of Minnesota's receiving corps and all that. Of course, he would have to play second banana in a sense to Randy Moss, who the Vikings took in the first round. It was a huge weapon. But Cris Carter still caught 78 passes for 1,011 yards and 12 touchdowns that season, despite Moss being there and all that. The Vikings looked like they would make the Super Bowl. Cris Carter seemed to like it and all that. But unfortunately, Cris Carter and the Vikings would lose on home turf to the Falcons in overtime. Gary Anderson's miss cost him dearly. I mean, how could Gary Anderson miss that field goal indoors of all things? Too. Despite all that, Cris Carter did have a 13 touchdown receptions in the '99 season. But of course, they got whipped by the Rams. Carter made 835 catches, second most in the '90s, behind only Jerry Rice. Carter still had his production and all that. Cris Carter exercised a out clause in his contract for his career in Minnesota. He kind of figured he was done for. But he was still one of the best Viking wide receivers of all time. Randy Moss be damned. Carter couldn't complete a deal and actually went to HBO's Inside the NFL team as an analyst. But that would be until October when the Dolphins needed a wide receiver. And, he had signs of rust and all that. He would have a kidney ailment, though, which cost him dearly. But, he retired after the season. But he put up, at the time of his retirement in 2002, he was second in receptions and touchdowns as a receiver behind only Jerry Rice. But of course, he's been surpassed ever since. But he still won 14 players with 1,000 or more receptions. All that. Cris Carter surprisingly was not part of the Hall of Fame class of 2008, which was his first time going. It was just awful. However, in 2013, he did get his due into the Hall of Fame, so that's good. So anyway, he would make 234 appearances in the NFL with Philly, Minnesota, and Miami, catch 1,101 receptions for 13,899 yards and 130 touchdowns. Most notably, he's one of 3 players to have multiple 120 plus reception seasons, like catching more than 120 passes, with only Wes Welker and Antonio Brown in the same thing. He's made the most touchdown receptions on Thursday night with 9. Thursday games with 9. Didn't know they played a lot of Thursday games. He actually has made the most touchdown catches with 2 yards or less in NFL history with 16. Well, he has 9 one-yard touchdown receptions, tied with Jeremy Shockey for the most. He did what he could. After football, he went to HBO and ESPN as an analyst and all that. Part of NFL Street 2 as a wide receiver. Thought I remembered it. Anyway, Carter did a lot of things and all that. He's been part of Good Morning Football since 2021. He has 2 children. His daughter is a philanthropist, and his son, Duron Carter, actually played a few years with the Alouettes. Unfortunately, he was known for being a terrible teammate alongside his Alouettes teammates. He would go through Saskatchewan and Toronto and now it's BC. So Deron Carter now plays for the Lions, BC Lions. And as I said, Cris is the younger brother of Butch Carter, who I think Raptor fans will not be too happy with because Butch Carter really wasn't that great of a coach, despite the fact that he helped the Raptors get to the playoffs for the first time as a franchise in 2000. His bats with Carter and McGrady just basically didn't work out, and then Lenny Wilkins was hired, and he helped the Raptors do decently well. But them's the breaks. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.